Communist Party.
And former economic advisor to President Obama, Austan Goolsbee, weighs in.
Just having some politician declare, okay, there's no problem, we can all go back out, that doesn't work.
Plus, Congressman Michael McCaul explains why China should be held responsible for the outbreak.
I call it the worst cover-up in human history.
I'm also talking one-on-one with Dr. Nicole Saphier.
And actually, it's noted that more physicians may kill themselves every day than actually veterans do.
And he was responsible for keeping our commander-in-chief healthy. Retired Navy Rear Admiral and Dr. Ronny Jackson is here.
And I made the observation a long time ago, Eric, that he's unique in the sense that things can happen during the day, and he can get spun up about this, that, or the other, and all kinds of stuff's happening.
Government Matters expands to 6 days a week.
He'll go to bed at night.
Back to answer your questions. That and so much more. Right now on America This Week. Welcome to America This Week. Each week we continue to be the fastest growing political talk show broadcast across America, thanks to you, our viewers. So as the coronavirus pandemic continues and we're all forced to stay at home and social distance, I will continue to ask our leaders and experts the very tough questions. Week 600 of the lockdown or so, plus or minus, I've noticed some things. The coronavirus has brought out some mighty strange things. Things are happening that have never happened before. Some good, some bad, and some ugly. Restaurant workers and other hourly workers are getting $1,200 stimulus checks. That's good. Now, cruise ships and airlines, literally the way coronavirus was brought to America on cruise ships and airlines, are getting stimulus money. That's bad. And get this, the Los Angeles Lakers, wildly profitable and worth several billion dollars, grabbed a cool $5 million of stimulus money. That's ugly. P.S. the Lakers were guilted into giving back the money. My dog, Mr. Free, and I are getting reacquainted. He's loving the extra walks. That's good. Publix limiting fish sticks purchased to one box. Again, one box of frozen fish sticks. That's bad. Facebook, Apple, and Google have offered to track every American's every movement, as in every move we make. They'll document it. Now that's ugly. A price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia has erupted. Oil prices have slid, dragging down gasoline with them. That's good. But gas down and oil down means oil industry jobs are getting slashed big time. That's bad. And if this continues, America will once again be dependent, wait for it, on Saudi Arabia and Russia. That's ugly. Forced to stay at home has us all watching more Netflix. One of the top shows on Netflix is Tiger King. I watched it. I gotta say, Tiger King, well, that's good, bad, and ugly all wrapped up in one. One of the silver linings of this new takeout-only restaurant life is that you find new restaurants that you've never tried before. That's good. Another new habit that's formed lately, the drive-through church confessional. I gotta think that's bad. And this, crowded beaches from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to Newport, California, way before it's cool to be this close to each other, that's ugly. Finally, seeing our frontline heroes in proper personal protective equipment, saving lives, not spreading the virus, now that's good. This guy, this gal, that's bad. And seeing the highest-ranking Democrat U.S. Senator bragging about wearing a mask on CNN, and minutes later, that he really has no clue what he's doing, that's ugly. I could go on, but so much coronavirus and so little time. Stay safe, folks. Stay healthy, folks. And remember, this monologue was made possible by a grant from the People's Communist Republic of China. Had they never spread the coronavirus around the world, infecting millions and killing hundreds of thousands, most of us likely would never have known the name Joe Exotic. Joining me now is former White House chief strategist, good friend of mine also, Steve Bannon. Steve, thank you for joining us. We've been talking a lot on this show for the last 6 weeks, 6 weeks in a row. The topic of the monologue has been China. China lied, people died. Tell us what you think. What do you think really happened with this virus in China?
Look, there's been announced that the president's ordered an investigation by the intelligence services and the medical services. So we're going to find out over time if this actually came from the P4 or the P2 lab in Wuhan. What we do know, and the president's phrase, Eric, knowingly responsible, goes back to the Chinese Communist Party. They knew they had community spread and human-to-human transmission in December. And we know from the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom that if they had told the world at the time they had human-to-human transmission in Wuhan, 95% of the economic devastation and 95% of the people dead would have never happened. They knew about this in December. They did not inform the President of the United States when they came to the White House to sign the treaty, signed the first phase of the trade deal that you talked about extensively in mid-January. They had the World Health Organization tweeted out on the 14th of January that senior Chinese medical officials have told them no human-to-human transmission, no community spread. They then vacuumed up throughout the world, in Europe, the United States, and Brazil, all the PPE, which is the personal protective equipment, is to protect us when they take tests. Also, those doctors in Italy, northern Italy, that were there at the front line like they were in Queens. This was, to me, premeditated murder. They're guilty of hiding this from people throughout the world, just like a biological Chernobyl. They've got to be held accountable. If we find out later from Pompeo and the president's investigation by the intelligence services that it actually came out of the lab on one of these experiments they've been doing, then all bets are off, because that's raising this to an entirely different level.
Oh, so let's take it from there. All bets are off, meaning what? I've had one of my monologues. I said they owe us trillions of dollars. Do we stick it to them? Do we stick it to China, and at the risk of our own economy, for the loss? That's just the financial loss. Forget about the human loss. Do we stick it? Do we send them a bill for $3 trillion?
I think it's much more than that. I believe we do that anyway, just on what we know is the chain of title of how they didn't tell us about the human-to-human transmission. If it turns out it came out of a lab and this was one of their experiments that got loose and they have direct culpability in that regard, to me, that means they are not a legitimate government, which I don't believe they are. And I think the world community has to come together and say, hey, can these guys continue on to actually rule? Right now, I think, look, if you look at our economy, basically we're $5.5 trillion a quarter. We're going to be down 40%. I think the reparations to the world are north of $5 trillion. I think it's going to be $5 to $10 trillion paid over time. And that's what we know today. If this is tied to those labs and it's tied to experiments they had going on, or Eric, even a biological weapons program, which they've signed a treaty they're not doing. If they have been doing change of function experiments to upgrade this, to kind of weaponize these things. And listen, a Nobel Prize winner in France, the doctor who got the Nobel Prize in 2014 because of AIDS and HIV, and the Indian Institute of Technology, they've both come out and say, hey, they think there's something with HIV tied to this. It's man-made. So if that's the case, then to me, their ability to continue as a government, remember the Chinese Communist Party, the biggest victims of them are the Chinese people. If this is coming out of a lab because of our investigation, all bets are off.
All bets are off again. I want to stick it to them as much as you do. Steve, you've written something interesting. Russia and Iran and China getting together to blame the U.S. What were you talking about?
Well, I think what's happening, you can see over the last couple of years, what keeps the mullahs in Tehran in business is the Chinese oil company and the loans from China. Pakistan, Persia/Iran, Turkey, and Russia are all working in coordination with China and their vassal state, North Korea, to control the Eurasian landmass. And now you're seeing those, and to take on the West, particularly the United States. Being a deal guy, Eric, they're very focused on removing us as the prime reserve currency. Iran, Pakistan, Russia, and China are working in unison, and China is our lead existential threat. People have to start to understand they're working in unison. You're seeing them start to blame the United States for all of this. They're sitting there right now saying, oh, this either came over from some personnel that came to Wuhan from the U.S. Army, or in fact, the United States was doing experiments. They have been at information and economic war with us, Eric, for at least the last 10, 15 years, and it's coming to a head now, I believe.
It's amazing. You look at who the winners are, if there are any winners in this whole thing. You go to the Johns Hopkins website. Russia has less than 1,000 deaths, they claim. Iran has a few thousand deaths. China, where this epicenter, where this thing started, has a few thousand. And we're going on 60,000 deaths in America. Steve, you've been right on this thing all along. I want to get you back as soon as possible. Again, Steve Bannon in the War Room. Check it out, folks. You can find it everywhere. Just Google Steve Bannon in the War Room. Steve, I really appreciate your time, friend.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate having me on.
Well, he's the former economic advisor to one President Barack Obama and a professor of economics at the University of Chicago, Austan Goolsbee. Thank you for being here, Austan. A couple of things. Let's start with the economy. Austan, I've been doing this a long time. You've been doing this a long time. I'm just blown away that we're spending trillions of dollars, throwing trillions of dollars into the economy, and it seems to be working. This almost feels like quasi-socialism. Am I wrong?
Well, I guess it's quasi-socialism. They're not taking over the means of production. I think it's what's weird. You saw these numbers come in as bad as they are, and that we need relief. This is not really normal stimulus where you're trying to jumpstart the economy. This is like we're using the money just so people don't have to get thrown out of their houses or shut down their businesses. And the problem with that kind of thing is until you get the engine back running, you're just going to have to keep coming back for more and more money. So I think this is definitely a tough moment for the economy.
I think you're right. And one of the things I put out was called Plan 2020. And that engine that you talk about, Austan, the economy is based on that engine. That engine is consumer spending in America. We're cocooning right now. I get it. We're throwing a lot of money at businesses and a lot of money at C-suites. But unless you get the consumer to start spending again, what's going to support the restaurants, the small businesses, the bodegas, even the dentists and doctors around the country? Where is the support for those people?
It's not going to be there. We can't recover until we can get out of lockdown. The only thing where I differ a little bit, maybe with some people, is just having some politician declare, okay, there's no problem, we can all go back out. That doesn't work. The reason we're in lockdown is because people are afraid that if they go out of their house, they're going to catch a disease that has a chance of killing them or their family members or anybody who's at risk. So the number one rule of virus economics is the best thing you can do for the economy is to slow the rate of spread of that virus. And I think that means we got to have a big ramp up in testing from where we are now. I think it means we got to wear masks, we got to have social distancing, a bunch of things like that. But if we follow the models, there have been 5 or 6 countries now that have successfully gotten themselves out of lockdown following that strategy, that they do enough testing, that the only people that have to go into lockdown are the people who have the disease. And if you do that, we might not be able to get back right away to where we were, but we could get a lot better.
Let me throw you something at you. So Sweden is a country who's decided that they think not locking down and getting their, they call it herd immunity, getting the whole country immune to the virus by not locking down was a smarter bet. They lose more up front, but they survive more on the back end of it. So I think there are other schools of thought. Austan, I have about 2 minutes. And I really want to get into this. There's a big concern that China, we've relied on China too much for supply chains for medical equipment, for masks, for ventilators, for everything. And now it turns out we're relying on China for some of the meat products that we're delivering here in the United States. China owns Smithfield Foods, the largest pork producer in the country and in the world. Are we reliant on China? Is it time? Is Bannon right? It's time to bring everything back to the United States?
Well, in the middle of the crisis, it'd be kind of hard to do that. I do think a lot of businesses are going to reevaluate partly China, but partly their whole supply chain and make it a little more resilient, that if you get something happen in one country, that doesn't affect everything else and you have to shut down. The idea of tariffs and putting up walls, I think, is a bad idea. I think if we had not had tariffs on medical supplies from China, for example, all through January, all through February, and through much of March, we would have been a lot better off. We would have had a lot more masks available. We could have gotten parts for the ventilators, and we could have hopefully flattened this curve a little bit.
Yep, interesting take on that. Lower the tariffs and buy more stuff from China. I'll take the other side of that coin, Austin. I say pay a little bit more for our stuff, but let's produce it here, even if it costs a little bit more, even if we have to pay our workers more.
But we don't have
5
it
or 10
here.
cents
That's
an
the
hour,
problem
they pay more
now.
in China. No, I think it's all about labor, though. Also, we ran out of time. I want to bring it back, but this is about the cost of labor. It's cheap labor in China. I get it, and that's built into the cost of goods. We'll talk about that next time. Austan Goolsbee, you know what I said? I was going to give your guy credit. Barack Obama spent a lot of money, seemed to do okay. Looks like Trump's trying to do the same thing. Good talking to you, Austin. Now let's go to Congressman Mike McCaul from Texas. Congressman, thank you for joining us. You've been very vocal about condemning China for its role in the spread of the pandemic. Sir, if you watch this show, and most of the country does, we 44 million people across the country, well, you know we've talked about this for the past 6 weeks. China has been the subject of my monologue up top. Tell us what you know and what you're asking to be investigated on the Chinese responsibility for this pandemic.
Well, I think it's important we go to the origins of COVID-19 to find out how this happened in the first place and why it happened and how we can prevent it from happening again. I call it the worst cover-up in human history. Dating back to mid-November, first case pops up beginning of December. The Chinese Communist Party immediately puts a gag order on the doctors trying to sound the alarm that this is a different type of virus. It is more deadly and more contagious. One of them actually dies from COVID-19. Then moving into January, the Chinese Communist Party, the government goes into laboratories, shuts them down, destroys lab samples, trying to control this investigation. Finally, ending up in January, the Taiwanese government warned the WHO, World Health Organization, that this is a human-to-human transmitted disease, along with the WHO representative in Wuhan warning General Tedros, Director General Tedros of the WHO, that we have something that is highly infectious. The Chinese Communist Party continues to lie about that. And unfortunately, Tedros and the WHO repeat that lie, saying it's not human to human. Fast forward to the Spring Lunar Festival, which is like their Thanksgiving and Christmas combined. 5 million people travel out of Wuhan. Millions travel outside of China internationally. And Eric, at that point, we have what went from an epidemic to a global pandemic.
You know, my concern, and Congressman, you're asking the State Department to look further into this, whether or not this had any origins within a lab. Forget the wet markets of China. Was it in a lab? And we talked about this last week and the week before, that there is some indication that in years past, that Wuhan lab has been the centerpiece of excelling, of increasing the deadliness and the contagiousness of a coronavirus. I mean, are you on that? Are you on that trail?
Yeah, I am. I've had classified briefings. I can't get into the nature of those discussions. I have asked the State Department and the intelligence community to investigate what happened. I was pleased to see the president today came out ordering his intelligence community to investigate the origins of COVID-19. You know, Eric, it's one of two, right? The wildlife wet market is what the Chinese government initially pointed to as the source. But as many authorities have told me, when they say it's one thing, it's usually another. I've had briefings on the lab as well. It's interesting that at this lab, they were researching bat-related coronaviruses and how that those COVID-19 or coronaviruses could jump to humans, precisely what COVID-19 is. Mm-hmm. We also know from two State Department cables in 2018 that this safety of the lab was called into question by our State Department.
Yeah, you know, Congressman, it's baffling. You look at the Johns Hopkins numbers. The United States is pushing 60,000 deaths. China pushing 8,000 or 9,000 deaths, and Wuhan itself almost unaffected comparatively to, say, New York or Louisiana. It's just insane. Congressman, thank you for your time. Appreciate you here. One quick question, sir. We hear that Pelosi is recommending the House not come back to D.C. to get some work done. Meanwhile, the Senate will be coming back next week. Your thoughts?
You know, I was ready to go back last week. I flew up there. I think we are essential employees under CDC guidelines, and we ought to be working. I think the American people expect us to be working. I'm ready to go whenever the Speaker deems it fit. I think we should be back up there right now.
All right, Congressman Mike McCaul from Texas. Appreciate your time, sir. Stay on China. China lied. People died, sir. Ahead on America This Week, she's working hard to make America healthy again. Dr. Nicole Saphier is back with us. And he was President Trump's doctor. Still to come a little later, Dr. Ronny Jackson joins me. This is an interview you definitely don't want to miss.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
All right, let's jump right into the interview segment. Dr. Nicole Saphier, who just released her new book last week, Make America Healthy Again, is back with me. Dr. Saphier, thank you for being here again. You know, I want to start with some very sad news this week. We heard about Dr. Lorna Breen. She was an ER doctor at New York Presbyterian. She had contracted COVID-19. She got better, and then she continued to help patients. She committed suicide last week, Doctor. Talk to us about the stresses of being on the front line of this virus, fighting the virus.
Well, you know, actually, I dedicated an entire chapter of my book to the mental health crisis that is just plaguing our nation. And I also go into physician burnout and the unfortunate statistic that doctors commit suicide at a significantly higher rate than the general population. And actually, it's noted that more physicians may kill themselves every day than actually veterans do. And that's largely because, you know, physicians are held to a much different standard when it comes to the general population. We are told that what we do is to be altruistic and to put everyone in front of us, which is essentially why we've gone to medical school. But unfortunately, that consequence of that oftentimes is self-neglect. And so right now with what we're seeing, there are a lot of emotion going on the front lines. You know, it's very overwhelming, especially in the last several weeks when you've had this massively increased patient load, extended hours. Doctors all across the board are getting decreased reimbursements, cuts in pay. And also, you know, they're scared. They're scared that they're going to bring something home to their families. So they're isolating themselves from their family, from their friends. You know, it's multifactorial, but this is devastating.
I think you hit on something very important. First of all, I think it's ridiculous that we wouldn't be giving hero pay to the frontline responders like the doctors. Talk to us a little bit about being family members. I have so many people saying, my husband's a doctor, my nurse, or my wife's a doctor. The thought of them treating COVID-19 patients coming home, there's got to be stress on the family too, yeah?
Well, so my husband and I are both physicians, and both very different types of physicians. Right now, I'm only seeing patients that have a COVID negative test because I do procedures in their head and neck areas. So my institution's very tight about making sure that people have been tested. My husband is actually treating COVID-19 patients. He is a stroke neurosurgeon. He treats aneurysms and strokes. And so since we've actually seen increased strokes with COVID-19, he's going in and treating them. But yes, he has angst when he comes home. He comes home through a separate entrance. He's immediately declothing and showering in a bathroom that's only being used by him. And, he's still trying to keep a little bit of his distance away from us, knowing that he could be an asymptomatic carrier of the virus. We are fortunate that we are all still healthy. But the truth is there's an underlying anxiety and fear. You want to take care of your patients, but you also want to care for your family.
Very important, and it's not just the doctors, the physicians also, and the nurses assistants, EMTs. I mean, it's a complete holistic approach to fighting this virus, and every one of your colleagues are putting your lives on the lines. I got to tell you, Dr. Saphier, we're going to say thank you so much. And again, the book is called Making America Healthy Again. Nicole Saphier, appreciate having you on the show. We'll bring you back very soon. Again, thanks to all frontline responders, doctors, physicians, nurses, EMTs, and everyone else involved in the fight against coronavirus. Thank you. Let's hear from both sides of the aisle here. Going head-to-head, political commentator Amisha Cross and former Deputy Assistant to President Trump, host of America First on Salem Radio, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Guys, thank you for joining me. Something that's been highly absent from the mainstream media. Let's talk a little bit about Vice President Joe Biden, his past, specifically with this new accuser, Tara Reade. Can I start with you, Amisha?
Absolutely. So, as you know, Tara Reade made her initial comments about Joe Biden a little over a year ago at this point. I think that a lot of it was not necessarily taken as seriously by the media at the time, because, as you also recall, his front-runner status didn't come until later on. And her story has changed significantly from the beginning till now. Now we know that there's some corroboration from people who she told at the time that we didn't know a year or so ago. And I would argue that COVID-19 has somewhat relegated coverage to kind of a backstage position for the most part. But I do think that it matters that her case be heard and that we see what happens. And that's the case for anyone who describes that they might have had or might have been a victim to a sexual assault or a sexual abuse case.
Well, that could be a first, Sebastian. One of the other fallouts of COVID-19 is that Joe Biden gets a little bit of a pass on a sexual harassment accuser. Your thoughts?
I'm just disgusted. The qualifiers coming from Amisha Cross, that her story changed. Let me challenge you something. Let me give you a challenge, Amisha. Give me the name of one woman who has accused a Democrat of rape who you believe, or one woman who has accused a Republican who you don't believe. Just one. I'll wait.
No, I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
So you can't give me one name.
So, Amisha, Seb, let me just jump in here a second, Misha, and this really is the heart of it. Absolutely, we agree 100%. Any accuser deserves to be heard and vetted. The problem is, has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted people like Justice Kavanaugh and others on the right? I believe that's maybe a little bit softer way of saying what Seb was trying to say.
If Tara Reade, I know one thing.
Really
If Tara Reade had accused Donald Trump, what would be happening right now, Eric? You know exactly
the same thing that happened to Donald Trump
right
throughout the campaign. He's had over 26 women accuse him, and he's still president of the United States.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, nothing was even really investigated in those 26 cases.
That's the double standard. That's the double standard.
And again, Amisha, stay on this. Guys, hold on. Guys, we want to apologize to the audience. We're trying to do this via a couple of Skypes, very difficult from remote locations. But And that is the point. Has there been enough coverage of Tara Reade's accusations in the media recently? I mean, the man is the Democrat nominee for president of the United States.
I would argue that there has not been enough coverage, but I wouldn't say that that's a nefarious thing or something that you could point to a left-wing media agenda. COVID-19 has sucked out the air from so many very important stories, and I would argue that this is probably one of them.
I said, not a bad argument there, though. It all has been COVID 24/7.
It doesn't matter whether it was COVID or World War III began. If Tara Reade had accused President Trump, it would be 24/7 on the front page
26
of
women
every
accused
publication.
President Trump, and it has not been.
Can I talk now, or are you going to talk? You're going to interrupt again? It would be 24/7 on the front page of every single organ that Amisha loves. It would be fake news central. It is the rank hypocrisy of the left that they only care about victims if they're accusing Republicans.
So why
All
are
right, we're going to have to leave it right there, Sebastian Gorka and Amisha. We appreciate both of your time. Sorry about that. Again, folks, delays, Skypes, etc. Having a tough time with this, but pretty soon we'll be back to normal, hopefully, the new abnormal. Seb Gorka, Amisha Cross, thank you guys. Next, your questions keep coming in, and we're taking them directly to some of the top experts in the country. Doctors Todd Dorfman and Dave Campbell join me to get you the answers. Stay with us. Every week, I listen to all of your calls to make sure we hear you. But keep calling, 888-601-0032. That call is toll-free. Tell us how you're feeling, rant or rave about being forced to stay home or whatever. Tell us so we can make sure they hear you too. Now, here are just some of the hundreds of calls that came in just this past week.
I have been in lockdown since early February when I contracted the coronavirus. I'm 60 years old. I don't know if I'll get it again, but I do know that China knew all about this and tried desperately to keep it under wraps.
And I think this is a bunch of bull that it's not China's fault that we had this. We was warned in plenty of time, and our president, Trump, didn't do a thing, did he?
Hey, this is Sue, Dayton, Ohio. Just wanted to say, I heard Nancy Pelosi decided to stand behind Joe Biden. Well, from what I hear about Joe Biden, it's safer to stand behind him than in front of him.
Okay, here's that number again, 888-601-0032. Again, toll free, give us a call. This is your time to be heard, folks. Follow me on Twitter at Eric Bolling or ericbolling.com, and we'll be sure that they hear you too. Every week we take your questions about the coronavirus to some of the top doctors in the nation. We're going to say thank you again to Dr. Dave Campbell, Chief Medical Correspondent for MSNBC's Morning Joe, and Dr. Todd Dorfman for joining me again. Guys, take a listen to this soundbite first. Roll it, crew.
And my concerns are with the way they're deciding who gets tested and who doesn't. I had some severe symptoms, and I kept getting refused to take a test. I'm wondering who decides that.
So what about that, Dave? Who actually, I think it's inconsistent from state to state. Who actually is making decisions on who can get a test for the coronavirus and the antibody?
Well, it's still usually a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA. And we have seen the number of tests opening up week by week. And I'm sure from what we hear from the federal government and local state areas that we're going to see more and more of that. It has always been a problem of testing availability. That is still the problem, but things are definitely loosening up, both for the viral testing and for the antibody testing, Eric.
All right, go. Let's take a look at this from Facebook. Rhonda Nielsen asks, how many known COVID patients had the flu vaccine last year in the last flu season? Dr. Todd, very good question. Does the last year's flu vaccine have any effect on whether or not you get COVID-19 this year?
Well, the short answer, Eric, is no. They're completely different viruses, and the influenza vaccine does not protect against COVID. However, in the ensuing year, in the upcoming season, if COVID were to come back, which it may, then being up to date on influenza vaccines, pneumonia vaccines, if you meet the appropriate criteria to receive a pneumonia vaccine, those are things that can help cut down on this whole flow of patients into hospitals and doctors' offices if we do get another corona round and there is not an adequate vaccine.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a look at this one. This is for both of you guys. Lisa Snyder from Facebook wants to know, do the doctors agree, this is a very good question, that putting people on ventilators is the right thing to do considering so many people never make it off the ventilator alive? Dr. Dave, very good question. Is this cart before the horse? Is this tail wagging the dog? Tell us what the story is. We know a lot of people who, once they're on the ventilator, don't come off.
In large part, Eric, that's because the people that go on the ventilators are also the sickest of the sick. And we have learned over the last few months that the mortality rate from going on a ventilator is particularly high. It's extra high for the oldest individuals. So doctors now are being as careful as possible using things like high flow oxygen. But when a 40, 50, or 60 or 70-year-old needs to go on a ventilator because it's that or die then because of an inability to breathe, they will go on a ventilator.
What do you say, Dr. Todd?
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I think looking at this statistically, it is the sickest of the sick population. And if you take a subset of that population, then we still need to protect everyone and give them a chance. Now, if we run out of ventilators, maybe we'll make some other decisions, sort of like we do in a mass casualty situation where we say, well, this person unfortunately will not survive. We cannot waste resources and make a different decision. But at this point, while ventilators are available, if the patient meets the criteria, they go on the ventilator.
All right, very quickly, let's get to this one. Lisa Beasley asked via Facebook, can a person get coronavirus through the air? She goes on to ask, but let me ask you, we only have about 15 seconds each. Dr. Dave, you know, has this evolved? Is the coronavirus, the way we transmit it, the way we catch it, is it still the same as it was back in December or January when we first started contracting it?
Yep, same virus. It's through droplets, it's through spray. It's not distant air travel like the question had implied.
Now, what about it, Todd? Any other indications that this may be going from droplets to maybe breathing the air other than droplets?
No, I think, honestly, Eric, it's the opposite. When we look at the risk of contracting this particular virus compared to something that is respiratory spread like measles, the risk of one person with measles spreading it to others spreads it to maybe 16 or 18 people at once. In this particular virus, we're only spreading it to between 2 and 2.5 people. That would not suggest that there's a respiratory spread component.
We're going to leave it there. Always great to have two really smart doctors on the show. Thank you, Dr. Dave, Dr. Todd. Appreciate you guys. Get you back again soon. Having a drink or two or more while stuck at home? Just ahead, the questions you might want to ask yourself and the help available from home if you think there might be a problem. In just a few minutes, I'm talking with retired Navy Rear Admiral and physician to the President, Dr. Ronny Jackson. Trust me, this is one interview you want to stick around for.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
As everyone continues to stay at home, one thing they seem to be buying, along with toilet paper, is alcohol. But how are recovering alcoholics holding up during all of this? Gabby Hart with Sinclair station KSNV in Las Vegas looks into it.
Well, since the pandemic started, more people than ever before have been stocking their at-home bars and mixing up the cocktails. But how are recovering alcoholics doing? Could more people develop alcoholism? We pulled in 2 AA members to get a better understanding. Since stay-at-home orders went into effect, the sale of alcoholic beverages in our nation has spiked by at least 55%.
People are feeling maybe isolated, and alone and afraid, unsure of the future, fear of what's going to happen, and that can drive people to drink for sure and drink more.
Paula is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous here in Las Vegas. She's been sober for nearly 18 years. She says times aren't so bad for people like her who have followed the program and fully recovered. But for people who just started their walk towards sobriety, it's likely more difficult to stay on track, especially not being able to attend group meetings or meetings with their sponsor.
It does put extra stress and strain when People can't meet one-on-one.
And for those who were in the very beginning phases of trying to quit drinking alcohol,
It may be even harder to get sober at this time because they're so consumed with fear and maybe anger.
The baffling feature of alcoholism, as we know it in AA, is that there is this utter inability to leave alcohol alone, no matter how great the necessity or wish.
John is on the Public Information Committee for Alcoholics Anonymous of Southern Nevada. He's been sober for 16 years now, and his message to those struggling during this pandemic is to stay strong. And for the newer AA members,
there are select in-person meetings that are available for those new people.
But what about the people who are drinking more than they did before the pandemic and aren't sure if they even have a problem?
And if there's people out there who are wondering, am I or am I not an alcoholic, or do I have a drinking problem? Should I get help with this? Just by having those thoughts, that's enough to reach out and get some help.
Now, there is a questionnaire available to help people figure out if they need to seek professional help. There's also an AA hotline, and online meetings are still available. For America This Week, I'm Gabby Hart reporting.
Thanks, Gabby and KSNV, for that report. A company in Providence, Rhode Island is using new technology to try and prevent the spread of the coronavirus. They're using a thermal camera to check the temperature of everyone coming into the building. Danielle Kennedy with Sinclair station WJAR has the report.
Anyone walking in the doors at 100 Westminster Street in Providence is now being greeted with a temperature check.
It makes my tenants feel safer. It's going to make visitors feel safer, our workers feel safer, and that's what it's all about.
Paolino Properties purchased several of these, a thermal camera called SeekScan, developed by a Brown University alum.
We have to adjust, and I want to be 10 steps ahead of where I should be. We have to think outside of the box.
Here's how it works. People step in front of this camera, which uses thermal imaging to measure skin temperature.
How accurate is this technology?
There was a construction worker that came in the other day. They went through it a couple of times, and we said, look, it's best for you to go home. And they went home, and there weren't any problems. But I want to have a thermometer or a number of thermometers at the security desk and let people take their own temperature.
A new technology that could soon test nearly 1,000 people entering the building every day to try and prevent the spread of coronavirus. For America This Week, I'm Danielle Kennedy.
Every week we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our great country. Chicago firefighter Corporal Mario Arujo died from complications from COVID-19 in April. Firefighter Arujo joined the fire department in 2003. He is survived by his mother. Also in April, Officer Brianne Leaf of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department was shot and killed in the line of duty. Officer Leaf was a veteran of the National Guard and served with the police department for 3 years. She leaves behind her child and parents. Rest in peace, officers.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers rough and tumble political arguments.
On the left, this new embrace of socialism. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Hard-edged opinions.
The media let Joe Biden get away with his first big lie.
They can come after me all they want, but they're going to have to kill me if they want me to stop defending the president.
Tough topic debates.
Destabilization in the Middle East, more chaos and more terrorism.
Unless we get away from all of this hatred, we're going to destroy ourselves.
We have to solve the border problems.
The wall is a big chunk of what we're talking about.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Investigates stories revealing toxic forever chemicals in water supplies.
My family was poisoned. My child was poisoned. I have been poisoned.
There he is, over here, straight ahead. Chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
Cartels, rape, gangs, and violence.
So you guys are both hitmen?
America This Week investigates the facts and the falsehoods and relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Dr. Ronny Jackson was President Trump's personal physician, and he's also a retired Navy Rear Admiral, now running for Congress in Texas. Dr. Jackson, first of all, thank you for being here, but more importantly, thank you for your service on both the Navy side and also the Marine, sir. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about what's going on these ships. On the naval ships, there seems to be outbreaks of COVID-19, also on cruise ships. Tell us what is unique about a ship, a vessel, that is a breeding ground for this virus.
Well, I don't think it's anything in particular about, the structure of the vessel, but it's just the configuration and the fact that you have large number of sailors that have to live in close proximity to each other. It goes so far as even on submarines, sometimes they have to share racks where they sleep in the same beds and they just alternate shifts. So it's just one of those situations where you have a large number of people crammed into a small area. It's very difficult to do any kind of social distancing in that environment. And so if one person does get infected, it's easy to spread it to someone else, and it spreads pretty rapidly. So that's just one of the just basic things that you can't really get around being on a ship, whether it's a cruise ship or destroyer or an aircraft carrier.
Sure. And I was just wondering if is it more about the people, as you're saying, or more about whether or not you can keep a vessel like that clean and virus-free? I'd like to move on a little bit. The president had Kellyanne Conway on last week, and I asked her, how's the president doing emotionally? The man has the weight of the free world on his shoulders, not just this country. Sir, you were his physician. Tell us the stresses of being president, especially under something like this. What's he going through?
Well, a lot of folks will let the stress just build on them day by day. And the president, fortunately for us, is not wired that way, to be honest with you. I saw him last week. I popped up to D.C. to get some stuff done, and I went out to visit with him a little bit. He's in great spirit. He looks good. He's got a lot of stamina, a lot of energy. And I made the observation a long time ago, Eric, that he's unique in the sense that things can happen during the day, and he can get spun up about this, that, or the other, and all kinds of stuff's happening. He'll go to bed at night. He'll get up the next morning, and he just resets. And he doesn't let it build on him. Every day's a new day for him, and he kind of thrives on, on being in the middle of, the action. And so I think he's a unique individual in that way, and I think it's serving us here as Americans, it's serving our country well.
No doubt the man has more energy than anyone, certainly anyone I've ever known at 7 years plus. But tell me about this. He says famously over the last couple of days, he said he hasn't left the White House grounds with the exception of once traveling to Virginia to set off the hospital ship on its way to New York. As his physician, or formerly his physician, is that healthy? Is it okay for the president to stay within the White House grounds?
Sure. I think he's doing the same thing he's asking everybody else in the country to do over the last few weeks, is just, not go out if you don't need to. And of course, being the president of the United States, you don't have to go out. The people that you need to interact with, they come to you. And that's one of the big advantages. And the White House medical unit's been super aggressive in making sure that everyone is properly screened and tested before they come to the White House, and certainly before they end up in the Oval Office talking to the president. So he's very safe there. He's got great people that take care of him there. And I think it's fine.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. I speak to him quite often, and when this whole thing with the bleach and what he had said about ingesting disinfectants, I looked at that and I was like, okay, the guy's under a lot of stress. He's under a lot of pressure. All he wants to do is save American lives, help Americans. He's throwing some ideas out there. He said it was sarcasm. I don't know. Maybe he's got people telling him to go with sarcasm instead of what it may have been. Doctor, do you think it was just a matter of a lot of stress, a lot of things going on at once, and something came out? Like it happens with everyone. It just happened to be with the president of the United States.
Sure. I think he's just, he's brainstorming a little bit. He said it in a sarcastic way, and, he's not a physician, and he never claimed to be a physician. He's out there throwing things out on occasion, and, stuff that makes good medical sense. The doctors will validate. The stuff that doesn't, they won't. And, I think there just a lot was made out of that. And, I don't think it should have been quite such a big deal at all, honest with you.
All right. Doctor, you're running for Congress in Texas. You got some pretty cool endorsements. Who are you running against, and what's your platform? What's your meat of your platform?
Well, I think, I'm running against a guy right now who's a lobbyist in D.C. He's a lobbyist for the Cattle Feeders Association. It's just the two of us. There were 15 of us in the race to start with. The two of us made it to the runoff. And, we're building momentum like nobody's business out here. We can just feel the network growing day by day in an exponential fashion. Now, my platform is what's important for everybody else in this country. I'm concerned about healthcare. I think as a physician, I have an ability to really make a difference on healthcare. I also am concerned about immigration. I'm concerned about regulatory reform, and I'm concerned about the moral decay in our country right now. Those are all things that are important to people up here in my district, in the 13th Congressional District of Texas, in Amarillo and Wichita Falls. And those are things that can make a big difference. And the thing I have going for me that my candidate or that my opponent does not is I have relationships. I just came from the White House. I spent every day there for the last 3 years working side by side with folks in the executive branch. So I have the ability to get stuff done from day one. And that's what I'm going to bring to the fight.
I will tell you, you are one respected physician. We do appreciate your time on this show. Again, you got some high-level endorsements, not only, I guess, from the president, if it's coming or has been already come out, but also the Young Conservatives of Texas. That's an important one as well. I'm going to say thank you to Dr. Ronny Jackson. Again, thank you for your service. Thank you service to the military. Thank you service to the president. And thank you. And good luck with your campaign, sir. And before we go, here's something that definitely caught the attention of America this week: proof of UFOs. The Pentagon released 3 short videos this week showing the unidentified objects flying very quickly on infrared cameras. Pentagon officials say they released the videos to, quote, get this, clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real or whether or not there is more to the videos. Can someone please call Agents Mulder and Scully? Well, thanks again for joining me for another America This Week. And for those of you who are able to head back to work soon, please stay safe, wash those hands. And if you can't yet and are still working from home, remember, you can still help your local mom and pop businesses. Order takeout or delivery from your favorite local restaurant. Or snag some cool gift cards to use once this whole thing is over. We end the night now with some great video from the Big Apple. New York City firefighter Louis DeRosa got out his guitar and did a moving tribute for healthcare workers outside of New York Presbyterian Hospital.